we just played h6, and white's bishop surprisingly drops back to f4. What is the idea? The most normal move is bishop h4, keeping the pressure, but bishop f4 is being played by several grandmasters and has a very poisonous idea. What is white's idea? Well, if we continue our development with castle e3 and play for our favorite setup in Tartakower style, we are going to face g4. And this is the well-hidden idea behind bishop f4. And well, finally my chessable course on the Orthodox has been released, the so-called dethrone the Queen's Gambit, a beginner's repertoire. And yeah, people is asking me what happens with bishop f4 as I didn't include it. Yeah, the idea of not including it is that the course, as the title says, is devoted for beginners. And bishop f4 is a very rare move among beginners. But nevertheless, people is asking me, why didn't you tell me how to play against it? So I felt a little bit guilty, and I decided to create a file I already sent to Chessable, and I'm asking them to include it in the course. The most common way to reach the variation we are talking about is by playing d4, d5, c4, the Queen's Gambit. Now we decline the gambit by playing e6, and after knight c3, play knight f6, knight f3, bishop e7, bishop g5, or bishop f4 are the most common. But after bishop g5, we play h6, and white drops back to f4. This is the normal way to reach this line. The thing about bishop f4, as I just explained to you, is to play with an early g4. Well, castling seems absolutely normal, e3, and now playing c5, countering the center, is absolutely normal. Yeah, the thing with c5 is that against bishop f4, in move 5, c5 is the main line and is a very big main line. There are plenty of choices after d takes c5, bishop takes c5, and this is not what I suggested in the course. In the course, against bishop f4, I recommended castle e3, b6, to play c5 as soon as we can. Yeah, we're trying to get hanging pawns, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, e takes d5, and in case of d takes c5, b takes c5. And these hanging pawns are pretty easy to play, as I explained in the course. But the thing is that against, if they play bishop d5, h6, and bishop f4, we will run into g4. I decided to recommend d takes c4. This is a very precise move that gives black a very nice game. Normally, not playing d takes c4 can be a little bit awkward because e4 builds a center and white is going to recover the c pawn right away. But here we are happy to be able to play bishop b4. And why can we play bishop b4 here and in the other position we are not able to do that? Let me explain what I'm talking about. In here, if I play d takes e4, e4, and I play bishop b4, is going to be answered by bishop g5. And having the pawn on h6 stops bishop g5. Yeah, by moving the bishop again, I am putting pressure on c3 and on the e-pawn. Check is not a problem, as knight c6 not only covers the check but protects the bishop, and there is nothing they can do to increase the pressure. I mean, d5 is simply captured, and knight e5, I mean, we can even play queen takes d4 and knight takes e6, bishop c3, check, and we have a great position. But this is not the whole story. They can play either queen c2 or bishop takes c4. Well, bishop takes c4 is a pretty normal gambit in the Vienna. After knight takes e4, they castle, giving a second pawn to get a great compensation. But here we can play bishop takes c3, b takes c3, knight takes c3, attacking the queen, and after queen b3, knight d5, attacking the bishop. And well, we're ready to castle and to play knight c6, threatening knight a5. But especially the most important thing is that we're ready to castle. In the Vienna, the bishop would be on c1 and they would play bishop a3. Of course, our pawn would be on h7 as well. But it's really interesting to see how the developed bishop on f4 is inferior to the bishop on c1, as bishop a3 is not available any longer. And we're gaining a tempo, and yeah, we're ready to castle. Of course, if white want to capture, we're capturing with queen, and they can recover one pawn, but they were a couple of pawns down, so they are still a pawn down, and we are already on a safe position, followed by knight c6 and bishop g4 or bishop f5 with a healthy extra pawn on the queen side. We have a queen side majority. As I'm mentioning the Vienna variation all the time, I'm forced to clarify what it is. It's a variation black chooses against the queen's gambit, and it's a pretty sharp line. Its initial moves are the following: d4, d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, and now d takes c4. It's really close to the queen's gambit accepted, and after e4, bishop b4 is the most popular, but b5 is also very trendy. So bishop b4, and now white has a couple of popular lines. Bishop g5 is the most common, but lately the gambit bishop takes c4 to answer knight takes e4 with castle is also very popular. It may almost transpose to the line we are analyzing, but with the inclusion of h6 and with the particularity of moving the bishop from e7 to b4. Queen c2 is almost forced, as e5 of course is met by knight d5, gaining a tempo again against c3 or f4, and queen c2 is answered by b5, and this is a pretty nice setup. We are sticking to our extra pawn, and we are bringing the bishop to b7, or even answering a4 with c6. There is nothing wrong with that. We are planning to play bishop b7, castle, a6, and to play with an extra pawn. Okay, so as you can see, this is a pretty nice way to meet bishop f4, d takes e4, and well, white can try to play e3 to recover the pawn, or they can play queen a4. I think e3 is the most promising, e3, and we have to play the precise knight d5. We're trying to capture the bishop, and of course this knight cannot be taken because after e takes d5 we have an extra pawn, and well, we're also threatening bishop b4, so bishop takes c4 is the most normal move, knight takes f4, e takes f4, and we reach a very interesting position in which white has double pawns. We have the bishop pair, but our position is a little bit cramped. Yeah, and this is a way to try to open the position and yeah, take advantage of our bishop pair. The game may continue with d5, but this d5, white is fighting for the initiative, but right away we get 3 against 2, pawn majority on the queen side, castle, d takes e6, bishop takes e6, and after bishop takes e6 we trade queens, rook takes e1, f takes e6, we are capturing on f4, and we are ready to play knight c6 with a healthy position. I mean, we have somewhat weakened pawn structure because of the e pawn, but they have double pawns, and well, our majority is better than white's majority in the king side, so this is a pretty playable position. And to finish with this analysis, after d takes e4, queen a4 is simply very comfortable for us. We can reply with c6, threatening b5, forcing queen takes e4, b5, queen d3, bishop b7. Yeah, b5 gives some space for our pieces. The bishop is already enjoying. And the thing is to play c5, so we have to prepare c5. e3, knight bd7. We are controlling both e5 and c5. And after bishop e2, a6, the last step. And yeah, we're ready to play c5, next move, castle and c5. The position can be evaluated as a little bit better for black. We are ready to castle, to bring the queen to b6, the rook to c8, and yeah, the kingside rook to d8. Yeah, and this is the way I recommend to face the creative bishop f4. Well, and I have to thank you for the support, for all your nice comments on the videos in the course. And yeah, we are creating, at Chessable, we are creating a community. Remember that I'm always answering, the authors in general are answering your questions in the forums. And this is a great way to develop a further understanding of chess. It's not just a course that is like a book written and untouchable. I'm always hearing your feedback and being ready to bring some new variations to the course as this particular one. So thank you very much and see you next time. Goodbye.